Well, folks, welcome back to Sosa in His Box. Today we are looking at assignment 15, and our stars from the assignment: John Brown's raid, Harper's Ferry, craziness. Okay, and in a note that actually kind of seems relevant and super important to make, today's assignment resonates a lot with what is happening in Minnesota. So if you have not seen what's going on, I'm going to be sharing a video to the website as well. Probably to the side or below, that captures what has been happening in Minnesota and when sometimes times of just tension that don't seem to be resolved turn to violence. And it's super relevant, and we're going to kind of see some things that connect naturally. So, John Brown's raid, okay? First, it's in the segment of the abolitionists and the "so what did they do about it" movement, okay, in the abolition movement. And John Brown, again, led this raid. You saw the videos in which he attacked an armory in Harper's Ferry and led this, rebellion to kill to white people and to lead this revolution against slave owners. And again, he turned violent. If you remember, he was violent in the Kansas-Nebraska Act, in which he killed 5 people with a sword, okay, led people to do that, and then he kind of stirred this growing tension, okay? But more importantly, I want to share student voices. So we have Maddie today, Zasha, we have Liz on a comeback, and we have, I think it is Louis, oh, it is Carlos. Sorry, it's Carlos. What's up, buddy? Just to go over some key things, I'm going to focus on the think about it questions. So video 1, think about it. The question was, the video talks about how John Brown wrestled with this question: to what extent was violence acceptable or necessary for political change? John Brown believed violence was acceptable and necessary. Do you agree with him? Maddie says, yes, I do agree with him. I agree with him because sometimes violence is the only way you can get people to listen to you. I feel like this was necessary because some people were already trying to end slavery by just talking and trying to persuade people that it was wrong. But at the end of the day, that didn't work, and it was probably never going to work. So John knew what he had to do to get his point across, which was use violence. So Maddie talks about this idea that sometimes, like you see it now, you try peaceful solutions, you try all of these things, but then somehow it still seems like there is no action, and so people turn to violence. That's what John Brown felt. That's what I think a lot of people in Minnesota are feeling. Zasha, on the other hand, says, I don't agree, because violence just leads to more violence. When people start taking action physically through violence instead of just saying what they feel and taking actions to help change, such as political change, the only point they get across to people is that they're immature and aren't worth paying attention to. It's such an easy alternative rather than doing it the right way. But when you do it the right way, you're more appreciated and focused on. Zasha talks about this idea that regardless of how, it's like Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high. You have to continue to do this thing. You have to keep doing it the right way, or you kind of ruin the movement. In the video I show you, Reverend Jesse Jackson says the same thing. And this idea that what's going on in Minnesota is kind of not really what's supposed to be about the protests against police brutality and these killings of black people in our current American society. So Zasha, I think you'd have a lot of supporters. And Lewis, yes, sorry, Lewis. And Lewis says, quote, I agree with him because in some matters people have the habit of having to learn things the hard way. There are times in which you need to shove people out of their comfort zone in order to give some modicum of understanding. So sometimes you need, I think Maddie would agree too, in order to really get the message and the pain across, you need to go to an extreme. And I think that's what is often seen in some of these violent movements. Okay. In video 2, the think about it question was, which well-known abolitionist contributed to John Brown's cause? What do you think this well-known abolitionist meant when they said, quote, while I continue to write and speak against slavery, I have become less hopeful of its peaceful abolition. I welcome any new mode of attack upon the slave system. That was, as Liz mentioned, Frederick Douglass. Liz says, quote, Frederick Douglass had contributed to this cause, or John Brown's cause. Even though he still tries to show people that slavery is horrible in writing about his experience, he's getting less hopeful. Frederick Douglass is getting less hopeful that the things he's saying are actually meaning anything. From this, Frederick Douglass was asking any new way to show or tell people about how horrible slavery is. Thank you, Liz. And I think Frederick Douglass would feel the same type of way. He's tried so hard throughout his entire life to give a voice for enslaved people and for free blacks in the United States, and to try and show the pains of slavery, and he feels like no one is listening. I understand that feeling. And I think people in Minnesota felt the same type of way. So Frederick Douglass kind of said it's time to try something different. In video 4, question 1 says, why do you think John Brown continued to write letters and give interviews from his jail cell? And then what did John Brown expose as a result of the attacks on Harper's Ferry? Liz says, quote, he exposed how deep the divide between the Northerners and Southerners was. The divide after this point can't be bridged. I think it's really like we start to see, especially with the election of 1860, there is a tipping point, and this violence, I think, was a good physical representation or physical manifestation of the divide growing between the North and the South. The suspicion, the nervousness, the picking the sides, the evilness that's going on, is all in this. To keep going, we have two more points. With video, I think it's video 4 still. Video 4, yep. Think about a question. A historian in the video states that John Brown put his accusers, quote, on trial when he said, quote, I had interfered on behalf of the rich. Had I interfered on behalf of the rich, the powerful, the intelligent, the so-called great, every man in this court would have deemed it an act worthy of reward rather than punishment. What does John Brown mean? Maddie, I think, puts it perfectly. She says, quote, if he had done something for the rich or the people in power, everyone would be happy and rewarding him for what he had done instead of punishing him to hanging as they did. Since he wasn't working for the quote-unquote correct view, the Southern view, the views were changed. I agree with this statement because everyone will always change their views on something when it comes from a person with money or power versus someone without it. That is actually Liz's point. Sorry. Maddie, so that's Liz. Thank you, Liz, for that part. Maddie says, quote, I think it meant if he were not on the side of the slaves, but on the side of the rich, white people, and he was fighting for them and not black people, he would be getting rewarded and not tried to be put in jail. I agree with this statement, Maddie says, because the government and the court helped you or was on your side based on whose side you were on. Meaning if you were trying to help slaves and say slavery was wrong and go against what the laws say, no one in Congress or the courts were going to help you be on your side. So Liz and Maddie both talked about this idea of how they agreed with John Brown that it depends on the side you're on in terms of how you are perceived. Okay, if you were on the side of the rich, white, and the powerful, you're going to be seen as a hero to some people, to most people, especially in this system at the time. And I think you still see this today. You still see that there is a huge bias in who gets supported and who doesn't get supported. And again, you see it in Minnesota, okay, what's going on right now. On top of COVID, you have this going on. And finally, I think Carlos puts it perfectly in the matter of 3 sentences, okay? It's the last question based off the paintings, okay? The think about it question was, based on what you've seen in the videos and examined in the paintings, do you believe John Brown should be seen as a hero or a villain within the abolition movement? Carlos perfectly says, quote, I see him as a hero because he fought for justice. He thought the only way to stop slavery was violence. Despite what people say, violence does solve things. Just look at war. Carlos, that is a profound statement. That is a statement that I think a lot of people will hear and agree with, unfortunately, that sometimes violence is the way to do it. I think you have a lot of people, though, on the other hand, saying that violence isn't the best solution. It's interesting to see how it all plays out, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how we evolve as a country in the 21st century if we need violence. I think we can still change things without it. John Brown, hero or villain, it's all up to you. Thank you, folks. Be safe, be happy, stay conscious, stay aware. Wear that mask. See everybody. You darn hooligans.